Oh, I did the expectations. I you're right. So Dave's doing his ASR, so I need to do something. Welcome, everyone. It is October 21st, and this is the 9 a.m. strategic planning meeting for the Board of County Commissioners. Please let the record reflect that Commissioners Jordan French and here's Waldrop and Kearns are in the conference room. Commissioner CUNY is traveling on county business. We are going to continue our budget workshops, and so today we're gonna, Randy, any lead in, or do we just jump into scraps?
We're just gonna start with scraps today.
Okay, so Scraps is here to present, so take it away.
Good morning. So a couple discussion items today, the operational costs, excuse me, evaluation and some savings opportunities, supplementary budget requests, vacant positions, an overall budget snapshot and cost breakdown by ILA holder, and then the status of those ILA holders, talk a little bit about some future plans, and then move on to comments and Q&A. Slide, please. A little bit smaller than I hoped it would be. So a couple things that we have done over the course of the last year and a half to reduce some of those budget issues, and then also save some money on the backside of that as well. So we did start a new vaccine cost reduction. So we swapped suppliers for about a 5% saving. So roughly translate to about $3,000 or $4,000 reduction from last year. We are reducing the number of outsourced trap neuter release cats, and that's outsourced. So we're probably going to, or we are going to maintain a trap neuter release program in-house. What that looks like right now, I think we're going to have to kind of do on the fly as far as what we're taking in. So it'll be based off of the overall numbers, but there'll be a percentage that we're looking at doing in-house for that. It is a contractual obligation, and we are searching for some community partners to take over that program and absorb that cost. After hours and emergency care, we talked with a few of our after hours partners, so the urgent care, emergency care, and we've capped that at about $500 per animal, and that's for the unlicensed, unmicrochipped animals that we don't know if there is an owner for the animal. In the past, it has been uncapped, and that cost has been passed on to the taxpayer. We've seen thousands of dollars go for that type of situation, and that's just not something that the county taxpayers should be absorbing. We've added a use of sector to our APO computer programs. Also included in that were printers and licensed scanners for in-vehicle use. What that did is streamline the citation process. So essentially, when a citation is going to be issued, everything is scanned off of the ID, emailed, and then much like a speeding ticket or whatever, presented with the citation at that time, rather than kind of running around a drop-off hand jammed documentation.
So like historically, when I started with Scraps in November of last year, all of our tickets are handwritten tickets. So that requires the officer to essentially, serve the ticket, also drop it off at the Spokane Valley precinct for the law enforcement agency copy, and then also bring it down to the courthouse. And I would say the majority of those tickets were dismissed for untimely because the courts are so familiar with using sector for infractions that, they're a lot of times they're required to mail out the tickets. And so if our officer issues this handwritten ticket, drops it off, at the courthouse, then the courts have a time too that they have to sometimes mail those out. And I would say a good chunk of those tickets were dismissed for technical or untimely. And so now switching over to the sector program, the tickets are automatically filed, and it's automatically sent to the courts if they do need to be mailed. So it increases staff efficiency, so a lot less man hours and also more proficiency in the sense that the tickets are going through more capably. And then I could jump into that next. So another thing that our department, so the next category that just has on here is request for court ordered restitution. So basically, per statute, for county statute in the city of Spokane, there is language in there for any dangerous dog confiscation that the owner is liable for the expenses of maintaining that animal at Scraps. So there is a legal court hold time. So if we declare a dog dangerous, Scraps is required to confiscate that dog. There is an appeal window essentially for the owner or a compliance window. So a lot of times those dogs end up in our custody for about a month, which reduces our capacity to perform functions. And also, so essentially by recuperating these costs, which we've never pursued before, we're starting to do that. So if a dog is declared dangerous, I would say 50% of the time, we just never hear from those owners anymore. Those dogs sit in our custody for 20, 30 days. And then per law, those dogs are euthanized. And historically, we've never pursued that expense that the owner is liable for. So we have, within the last few months, started implementing these restitution letters where we're sending them a bill essentially. And if they don't pay the bill, then it's going to go to collections. And so since about May is when we kind of started keeping track of these animals. It's about $10,000 so far for those animals involved in that process. And there's another element of restitution, which just having a relationship with the prosecutor's office. If a person's charged for animal cruelty, we can seek restitution for cost of vet care, holding, staff time, officers' time. So that's something that we're more readily pursuing.
What was the $10,000?
So that specifically is related to dangerous dog. It's not, I wouldn't call it restitution, but it's essentially they're liable for the expense in Title V, which is the Animal Control Ordinance. So basically says if Scraps shall confiscate this animal, which we're required to do if it's declared dangerous, the owner is liable for the expenses of maintaining this animal if the potentially dangerous or dangerous dog declaration is upheld. And so historically, Scraps just, if the owner never turned up, they would just take the loss and not pursue that expense. So there was some contracts that we had to update between our collections, which Chris Davis helped us sort out. We discovered there was a contract from I think 93 that was expired for our collections department. So when we started kind of going down this route, it got a little sidetracked, but we got it kind of up and running. Pursuing that.
Is the 10,000 per dog?
No. So it's dependent.
Total.
So it's so basically there's different holds. So like there's a first hold window for the hearing examiner. Then the owner has another opportunity to appeal that to Superior Court. And so like if they do not comply, register, or further appeal, it can kind of lengthen the window. So I would say it's for an individual animal, it's probably averages around $1,000 for an individual animal.
Thank you.
And it's cost recuperation that wasn't being done in the past. Kind of back to the use of the sector program too. So there is a little note in there that is a license or citation option. So we're not just throwing citations at folks. We are saying, hey, so there's an education piece to this. There is licensing in Title V. So we give people the option to license before a citation is issued. And then moving on to elimination of non-contractual obligations. So there was a time that we were delivering mail for the USPS because the resident had a dog that didn't necessarily like the mail carrier, so Scraps was called out. And then we're no longer completing some of the forms and investigation piece on behalf of the health district. So that frees up some time and some resources. They're coming back to Scraps as well that aren't going for USPS or the health district. Additionally, we've updated some staff schedules, policy and procedures, and we're looking at a pretty significant reduction in overtime costs over the course of this last year as well. I think everyone's tracking on the majority of our interlocal agreements being expired. The draft, and I gotta give props to Chris Davis and everybody on the Scraps management team for really hitting this hard. The ILA, the updated ILA is in the final draft stages right now. And if anyone collects some understanding, maybe Chris could speak to it. Maybe if we move along, Chris. I was just looking to give you my seat. So we are looking to request some position funding.
Next slide.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yep, next slide. Thank you. So we are looking to request some position funding. There are four part-time shelter tech one positions. Those are a little over $31,000 a year each, totaling about $126,000. So two canine enrichment, behavioral assessment techs, one foster tech, and one clinic tech. The clinic tech did max out on their 2024 hours. We are looking to bring that individual back here after I don't know, about 80, 90 more days, something like that. But those behavioral assessments and the enrichment folks, that is a contractual obligation that behavioral assessments are accomplished. And then the enrichment piece of that is kind of for the mental health and well-being of the animals in our care. Those are specifically for dogs. The one foster tech, we've got a pretty robust foster program, and she does some magnificent work and augments the full-time person who's a shelter tech too. So it's kind of like the volunteers that come in. It's one of those programs where they're taking animals out of the facility, caring for those, which frees up more space. I think in the long run, having a foster tech on staff most likely more than pays for itself, just through the work they do with fostering animals out, specifically kittens, specifically during kitten season. And then clinic tech, so assisting with the high volume spay neuter, the whole vet med program in general. We've also got one part-time animal protection officer assistant. So they're running the ambulance calls, assisting with non-investigation type of APO work. And then it is a pathway to the commissioned APO position. In the event an APO position opens up, typically that person has got the majority of the training, they can slide into that position. I do apply for it, but they can slide into that position fairly easy. And then future goals is public engagement, education, and fundraising. And this was just kind of something that's been kicked around, I think, for at least the last year. But to assist with media requests, promote adoptional animals, seek additional funding through grant writing, and kind of just be that overall face of Scraps.
Question. Oh, so are these part-time positions that you discussed? Are they filled or not filled?
Yes, ma'am. With the exception of the clinic tech that maxed out for hours for 2024, there are people in those positions right now.
So what are you requesting then?
To continue to keep those folks on board.
Okay. So in order to maybe keep your budget, was there a request to cut the positions or
There
you
was
could cut
not.
them?
There was not. We could. They are part-time, so they are unfunded positions, but the slide was just to kind of show the impact that those folks have overall in pushing our mission forward. And I mean, just to kind of be transparent too. I don't want to not come in and say, hey, here's the positions that are being staffed right now. This is understand that we are going to fall short, or looks like we're going to fall short on our budget. But the impact that they have, I think, warrants a strong look.
So they're all filled, including the part-time animal protection officer.
Yes, ma'am, with the exception of the future goal piece, they are.
Right, okay, thank you.
And in your guys' adjusted target, the amount that you were looking was 302,000?
It was.
I'm looking at the spreadsheet. Okay.
And then current staff vacancies, slide please. Current staff vacancies, we've got 3 animal service rep positions open right now. Also another big impact. So these are the folks that are answering the emergency calls, the routine calls. We did do a run of how many calls we did receive for service. So January to July 2024 calls for service was almost 58,000 phone calls. So those phone lines are running quite frequently. That's 38,000 the main line and almost 20 to the emergency line. So another kind of push for implementing Shrek is the emergency answering service. Should drive a reduction in the number of animal service reps required to meet our service goals, but we're not there yet. So just one of those things where we're looking to maintain those that service, keep those phones being answered and those things filled with staff. They're also the folks that are dispatching animal protection officers out. So through 2023, impounds was just shy of 6,000 impounds. Processing intake, adoptions, reclaim, and licensing. So intake for 2023 was just shy of 59,000. Adoptions was just shy of 3,000, and then reclaims was right around 600. So they are processing all the admin actions for those services that we're providing. And then there is one Shelter Tech 1 position that's open right now, providing that daily animal care, feeding, watering, exams, vaccinations, administering medications, and then cleaning and maintaining the shelter and kenneling equipment and animal housing areas. There is a budget snapshot there. A little bit small, but 2023, we're looking at 4.1, 24, we're looking at 4.3. And then got that in front of them as well. And we probably move on to the next slide.
So in 24, how many months does that represent?
That was taken somewhere mid to late August.
So 9 months, so 3/4, so you got another quarter on top of that, so 3, 4, 3, 5, you think you'll be
We
final for
are,
the year?
so if we flip back to like the outsourcing of tracking and release, we are still making some reductions while still meeting our contractual obligations. I'm trying to stay optimistic. I think you're in the ballpark, but it's gonna be kind of interesting to see where we land. We've made some
Okay.
significant cuts, and then with
Yeah, I wasn't trying to be critical, I was just trying to estimate what year end might look like.
Not at all, not at all. And
Okay.
it's kind of rough to quantify some of that because like the restitution piece is so new. I didn't want to throw a number out and be completely off. So, yeah, I think you're in the ballpark. I just don't want to say yes or no because we're not sure where we're going to land just yet.
No problem. Thank you.
Better than what we have in the past, I believe. Slide, please. So, again, a little bit small, but we did a 5-year look at the average percentage usage, and obviously 2024 is not wrapped up yet, but if we look at ILA holders, everyone have this slide. So I guess I'll kind of let that one soak in for a little bit, sir.
So I just want to make sure I understand the chart. So you got 2023 invoiced amounts and 2,160,000 is what we're showing there. But then you say on the fair share based on a percentage, it should have been 633, which means the county kicked in 1.5 million more than our partners should have because either they weren't covering their part of the share or they weren't covering their percentage. Am I reading that right?
That is correct.
Okay, very good, thank you.
And that we can go back to the importance of that updated ILA coming out here pretty shortly. It is
Yep.
the final draft. There are two. If we go to the next slide.
One second.
Sir.
So just a couple of additional comments on this slide. For the commissioner's recollection, all of our contracts with scraps and other entities are a fixed dollar amount that are in the contract. What Jesse and team are doing with this slide is showing, here's the fixed contractual amount that we cannot bill more for. If we look at activity based on every individual jurisdiction that drives our costs, if we were doing a true cost recovery approach, this is the fair share would be what they would be being billed, should be being billed to do cost recovery appropriately. Because
Some of those
we,
are huge too.
yeah, and because our contracts are set at a fixed level, it doesn't allow us, there may be some CPI adjustments, but don't allow us to go and change them, with the exception of the ones that Jesse will go through here pretty soon. A lot of those costs are falling to the county to foot to run scraps.
Can I say it differently? We're subsidizing the other small cities to the tune of $1.5 million out of the general fund.
Primarily the city of
Actually,
Spokane.
yeah.
Not the small, yes, Spokane Valley and the city of Spokane are the biggest burden.
Okay,
So,
just wanted to put a different perspective on it.
It is everybody though. I mean,
Yeah, everybody
it's-
is everybody.
it's-
No,
but
percentage
it's
basis, yeah.
bigger
Yeah, no.
with the bigger jurisdiction, but everybody is being subsidized
Yeah,
to
the
to
model that
some
was-
level.
Yeah, the
Yeah.
model that was developed at the very beginning was a faulty model. And we're paying the price for it.
Mhm.
And we are, slide please. So the next slide will show you, there are two active, interlocal agreements right now. Everyone else is expired in a year to year, month to month. Spokane, which does consume a large portion of our resources, usually about 51-52%. Their contract does expire 31 December of 2025. So, if we do enter into a agreement with them, December of 2025, we'll be looking to recoup a lot of those costs.
So it's a goal to move to a low cost recovery model,
It is.
or is there a desire to stay to a fixed sum?
We're looking to recoup those costs.
Right, great, thank you.
Mechanism for how we do it still needs to be determined, but the intent is to move to a cost recovery.
Good.
There's Settle and Adjust versus just an actual bill. Settle and Adjust have some administrative obligations with it, as opposed to agreeing and creating some clarity up front for every jurisdiction. There's an approach. You could look at last year's amount and we're gonna bill you based on that amount for next year. We'll keep doing the same thing going forward. We've got 9 interlocals that are up right now for renewal. The intent would be to start stepping into a new interlocal that does have cost recovery, at least for those 8, 9 jurisdictions in there.
I'm surprised if I'm reading this correctly, a lot of these jurisdictions, essentially everybody with the exception of Spokane Valley and Spokane did 1 or 2 year contracts is all, but then Spokane did a 7. And in 2014, the Valley did a 20-year agreement with us?
Correct.
Wow.
And some of that was initially due to the debt that we took out on the scraps facility. And so we entered
Okay.
into very long-term contracts with both the city of Spokane and the city of Spokane Valley.
Okay.
So the city of Spokane, several years ago, we were able to renegotiate and shorten the term of that.
Yeah.
And about that same time, the commissioners agreed to cover the full scraps facility debt out of REIT.
Yeah, because we were still covering the debt, we'd be underwater by close to $400,000 or $500,000.
Yeah, that's accurate.
Yeah, I remember.
Okay.
So, not to like regurgitate all of the past history, but the original model, do you remember offhand, like back in 2018, 2019, how much private dollars flowed in?
So I
Do you
can speak
remember?
to it a little bit. So the Scraps Hope Foundation was separated out. Maybe even Lynette can answer this better than I can. She's the one who brought in all the money. What do you think it was, Lynette, in 2018?
I know we had a
Foundation was
presentation on
free.
it, I just can't, it was about a year ago and I can't remember, a year and a half ago.
It fluctuated somewhere between $200,000 and $400,000.
So, I mean, that was how, I mean, we're still way off now with the dollar amount, but if you were to add that in, because the original model had this private partnership piece that was, and it did contribute to the budget and lowered the costs, but something to consider as we move forward, what will the model be? And that's where you're suggesting maybe bringing back the development public relations
Mhm. Sure.
position that
Mhm.
that used to exist and used to work with that foundation and the community to raise funds
Mhm.
towards that did go towards scraps.
Absolutely.
Operations.
Kind of liaise between Scraps and the Scraps Hope Foundation.
Anyway, it's just something to consider again, that if our partner cities, you know, it may be challenging for them to afford their true cost, but we have to look at a model that's gonna pay for what we think is important as a community in terms of animal safety. So, and protection. So anyway, it's just a thought that maybe some of the cities would contribute towards that position. And then we could all be raising private funds too towards the effort,
Sure.
which would bring everyone's costs down.
That would definitely be ideal.
But the other dynamic that's changed, even the Humane Society, contributions to the Humane Society have dropped off. So it's not just Spokane County that's seen a reduction in revenue from contributions, it's the Humane Society as well.
Main
And
society,
the model may not be viable anymore.
yeah.
So we just have to look at that
Yeah.
and consider, you know, what everyone can afford to do and then how to kind of rebuild some of that relationship with the private sector too. Yeah.
yeah, the Humane Society is facing the rising costs as well.
Right. Costs are
that's-
going up, yeah.
Even news article came out about their insurance rates, went up 8 times what they were paying
Wow.
before. So, I think just cost of doing business has gone up substantially in the last couple of years.
One item that is important to highlight and oftentimes doesn't get enough attention is if you look on the previous slide, you'll see what Jesse and team have done is they've taken our budget, they've netted out license revenues. So that is a offsetting cost to our operations. Our license revenues are, what do we estimate nationwide? Less than 20% of people actually are licensing their pets. So if we even had 50% compliance, that would greatly change the revenue versus expense model here as well. So it's another area that continuing to educate on this stuff is important. As we come into contact with the public and they don't have a licensed pet, giving them an opportunity to get licensed so that we can get them in the system and keep sending renewals out. But we just have this legacy, it's not just here, it's nationwide, owners who don't license their pets. Which also then turns into when the pet gets lost, we don't have an ability to track them back down to their owner, which is very important for our community.
I'm already working with communications about doing a news blitz about licensing and having people come into greater numbers of compliance. So we are working on the educational aspect of that.
You know, just looking at the one number that I am familiar with is the city of Spokane, adjusted for inflation, they're paying less today than they were back in 2009 or 15 years ago.
Correct.
They're paying less today. Yeah, even though the city's grown.
Another
Demand
key
is
thing to
growing.
look at too is that because of those rising insurance costs and that we are now the only entity taking large dogs. The Humane Society will no longer take in large dogs because of that insurance rise issue.
Spoke Animal.
Spoke Animal.
What does Spokane still have big dogs?
So Spoke Animal won't accept large animals, anything,
Spoke Animal, excuse me.
any greater than 30 pounds.
And I think Spokane Humane is still taking large dogs. They're I think
Did they get the insurance thing
I
sorted?
think they did. I think they're kind of following suit with what Scraps is doing and or maybe they were doing it before us, but I think behavioral assessments are a large part of that risk piece.
Mhm.
So I think they're pretty heavily going through their behavioral assessments before animals are adopted out. Seems to be a trend, not just with us, but with rising insurance costs across the country. And just insurance carrier stipulations and then overall risk involved to public health and safety. Pretty high opening.
What's the story with some of the small towns having really short contracts that haven't been updated for 5 years?
So that's a great question. We something that's been on our radar for quite a while. Wanted to get done. I think ideally we wanted to get it done last year or have something early this year. It was just there's a clause in them that they go into a year to year or month to month after that, so. Getting a few other things sorted out, like the behavioral assessments and the building cleanup and all that stuff. We thought we were still recouping some of that. Let's work on some of the in-house issues and then while we address the expired ILS.
So I know it's on the next slide for the future plan, but you talked about the city. Do you intend to renegotiate all of those contracts at the same time with the
Next
same
slide.
model?
So we're definitely looking to share that contract with everyone who's willing to work with us. I think the cities, related to them last September, they've got a couple things that they've got to get squared away before we have that conversation
With who?
with the city.
Okay. So on all the other cities, do you plan to leave them month to month, or do you want to renegotiate them to make them all kind of consistent?
So once, so like I said, the ILA is in that kind of final draft format. As soon as it's approved and everyone's got that second, third, fourth set of eyes on there, the plan is to send it out with like a 60 or 90-day notification. Say, hey, take some time, review this. We've streamlined a bunch of stuff. If you have any questions, let's get together and kind of hash this out.
Is that with all the cities?
With the exception of the city and the valley, their contracts are still active right now. So everyone who's expired, I think we'll probably look at moving forward with those or reaching out to those folks first.
One thing, just to remind the commissioners, part of what Jesse and his team has been doing, working with legal, all of our interlocals are all written differently, which is extremely challenging to have to manage operations. So their goal in this has been to develop one interlocal agreement, and that will be used for the blueprint for all the small cities and likely any of the large cities if they choose to contract with us. So that's why part of it's taken a bit, because we wanted to make sure all of our language is harmonized in there so that we can go through and they can manage to a single contract. If you recall with the city of Spokane, we're still in dispute with them. They have their code is not in compliance with our contract. They have not engaged any further on that. So as it stands right now, they're not in compliance with their contract. Their contract comes up the end of 2025. Should the county have interest in renegotiating with them, there's a significant cost to them, and there's still significant language that they're going to have to change with their code to come into compliance.
Please. And then I think that one, so future plan was to, as Scott had mentioned, was to complete that boilerplate ILA, again, kind of in that final draft form. And then request your support to provide 60-day notifications to our contracted agencies, highlighting the changes to do contract format and cost recovery fee per service matrix. And then we looking to implement here is shortly thereafter, hopefully. Yeah. Move on to questions and comments after that.
Any other questions, Commissioner Jordan?
So on the big picture of your budget, there's a request, well, the adopted budget was 4.3 million last year, right? And then the request is 4.6. Right? Total 4,603,000. So there's a 302,000 target adjustment to target, as it's called here. So the question is, for those staff members that you mentioned early on, 4 part-time shelter tech, 1 part-time animal protection officer, are those included in the 4.6 proposal, or are those in addition to the 4.6?
So the part-time position, so for clarification, the part-time positions and the full-time positions, are they all included in that?
In the kind of basic budget request, or are those supplemental?
Supplemental.
Those are supplemental.
And those are basically 5 part-time positions that are currently staffed.
Correct. So I know that sounds like a bit of more of an ask than maybe we should be. There's an equation out there. I think it comes from UC Davis. That kind of gives you capacity for care. So how many animals can you care for in your facility? And then overall capacity. And we are a little bit short if we use that equation. We have made it work in the past. There are some things though, like I had mentioned with the contractual obligations and whatnot, that would just it'd be a little bit too difficult without those folks on board. They are extremely heavy hitters when it comes to pushing Scrap's mission forward.
So to follow up on Commissioner French, looking at your actuals to budget. And I know you still have, expenses coming in but it looks like you may be under budget this year.
So I know it looks like that. We're hoping the projected is wrong. We're hoping we fall underneath that. And it kind of goes back to, it's hard to quantify with the cost reduction and cost recuperation things that we've done to see exactly where we're going to land. A lot of this stuff hasn't been done ever or in a very long time. So for full transparency, they want to come in and say, yep, here's what we're looking at. Everything is peachy. We think we're going to be better off than what the numbers show. But just because we don't know with some of the cost recuperation and reduction things that we put in place.
Right, I guess my point was. And I get that there's probably wage increases and COLAs and things that now you're trying to adjust to stay within that 2024 budget. So just wondering if it looks like you're gonna get close or under your 2024 budget. But even with that, there's obviously increased costs with staffing and so were you able to make any cuts then to get down to the 2024 budget?
Where did we fall?
So the first round of cuts was all in M&O. So
Okay.
we did about
Okay.
170,000 in
Okay.
M&O. And then the second round, we basically did the supplemental requests.
Okay, so the goal amount was around 300 and
Yes.
something thousand and you were able to cut 170 of that.
Yes.
Okay, is that? But I don't know if the budget documents have been updated to reflect that or do they still show
We'll be
that?
providing an
delta?
updated version tomorrow.
Okay, great. That's where I was kind of confused. So thank you for trying to find ways to
We are
cut back,
trying.
knowing that our budget is very tight this year.
The team has done a fantastic job of trimming things where they could trim. Big shout out again to Chris Davis for working on these ILAs. We think that's going to be a pretty significant cost recuperation there. So a lot of work went in that, a lot of hands in there, and everybody did a fantastic job. Yes, Scott?
Just a couple of comments on here. The efforts that Jesse and team have been undertaking the last year plus is really understanding that our costs have been going up. How do we look to make sure that what's discretionary versus what's contractually obligated and making adjustments in those? And they've been focusing on some areas like trap, neuter, and release and the vaccine cost improvements. There are a number of areas that you can look at what's trending actual right now. And if you just annualize that, it looks like they could be trending under, but Jesse will probably say that the animal protection operations doesn't have a steady linear line, right? You may have big bumps. We know when we have kitten season, it's a big bump. When we have dangerous dogs, it's a bump. And so you just never know. It's not a true 12-month trend line on there. But if it continues to run the way it is right now, it looks like it could be under budget by the end of the year. So.
The good news is I haven't been getting as many calls about scraps as I used to. But I understand that if you don't have the resources, that probably means that the cost to us is gonna increase and stuff, so. I'm sensitive to the balance of being able to make sure that you can do what you need to do so that we don't need to field all the calls, so thanks for the work you're doing.
Commissioner Jordan, you know?
One more comment, Jesse had highlighted in here some future working with Shrek, and really what that is his team handles all the dispatching right now, call receives and dispatches out. There's a radio system that they have as well. They've been working with Shrek to see are there opportunities to become part of the regional dispatching model. It's as Chris will highlight in other counties, that is very consistent utilization where they're using the emergency communication centers to do that. So with Scraps or with Shrek, all the acronyms, with Shrek working on their new CAD implementation, scheduled to go live in late 2025. That's kind of the time frame for the convergent conversations with Shrek and Scraps. Let's come back together. Once CAD is implemented, they could build all the new dispatches and stuff, and then they'll be in a position to be able to look at what that body of work would be to take it on with Shrek.
So on a good day, we typically have 2 dispatchers working in the dispatch office. We did a year look back, and I think I threw maybe a 60,000 call volume in there, but I think when we did a year look back, we were just shy of 100,000 phone calls coming into the facility, which is pretty significant.
One of the big obstacles that we're kind of looking at with kind of incorporation with Shrek is our officers getting access into the CAD system. So to get that, we would need our own reporting agency identifying number. And essentially to obtain that, 51% of the calls for service have to be for the administration of criminal justice, and 51% of our budget has to be for the administration of criminal justice. There are other agencies that are like a separated animal control regional facility like we are that have obtained this access. Our biggest challenge with getting that is going to be the budget piece, because the federal government doesn't recognize any of the care for the animals, even if it's related to seizure of like a criminal investigation. They don't attribute any of that to the budget. So any veterinary costs, any shelter technician costs, any cost of food, water. So what other departments have done is essentially they had their commissioners do a resolution which structurally separated out like the enforcement group. So like the animal protection officers being separated as its own entity, even though we could be under the same roof. So that is something I've kind of modeled after this other agency, which is out of Arkansas, who obtained that. But I know Shrek's kind of challenge with their new incorporation of system is like what information they would have to modify the way it is now, what information our officers would be able to see, which is a burden. I'll tell you that. So if you guys aren't aware, our officers serve search warrants. You know, we seize people's property. I know if any of you have animals, how passionate you might be about your animals. We go to the same residences that law enforcement's going to, really with non-lethals and without the backup, without the communication. So us knowing, like right now, if we go to an address, unless we physically call emergency dispatch, we don't know if there's gang affiliation, you know, violent history. So there may be an active thing where law enforcement's working on a case that we're not aware of, and then we totally step on that just because of being unaware. So it'll increase our officers' safety, but it will require some structural, at least on paper, separation of our departments. And it's still something that I'm working on and will propose to you guys at some point. But that is with this incorporation of Shrek, if we got the criminal justice information system access, it would be more of a seamless incorporation because they wouldn't have to figure out how to like essentially give us very limited information, but access at the same time. So that is an obstacle, just to put it on your all straight.
Yeah. Jesse, one of the other areas you and your team are looking at is potentially bringing on another veterinary and veterinary support. But you're looking at a financial analysis to show how much right now animal protection is a 24/7 operation. So we get calls all day long, all night long. We get animals who are injured, and with our vet who works, the 40 hours a week, we don't have coverage at all times that we need to. And so that's what translates into going to after hours pet clinics for operations or whatever. So his team is looking at if we brought on another vet and if we brought on another vet tech, I think is what it is, what could we offset in third-party outsource costs? And would it be financially more beneficial for us to add those and have a cost reduction to be able to sustain that investment? So.
I want to ask one last question. So when it came down to it for this year with the tough budget decisions that we're gonna have to make around all the different departments in the county, is your preference to continue funding those on the slide 6, continue funding the part-time tech positions and the animal protection officer assistant over filling those vacant positions?
Well.
Sorry to put you in
That's
that.
a question.
Well, or is it a mixture or what? Because, I mean, I want to be responsive to you as management of the operation and what you think will, be as successful as possible for the running of the operation.
Sure. And I think a mixture would probably be our best bet.
I know you said in your budget submission that those people answering the calls, you just don't have a lot of coverage and people have to wait a long time on the phone.
That is, yeah, that's probably one of our biggest complaints is the long wait times. And yeah, we are, summer is the busy season. So we are coming out of that busy season. But there's still a lot of administrative pieces to that puzzle that those additional ASRs could assist with.
So having the flexibility to kind of make that choice within a dollar amount would be best for you.
I think so.
And we are working on lowering those call volumes. So we have a new phone tree. So that phone tree allows us to redirect what is animal protection, what is just customer service,
Got it.
question about licensing. So there's now a voicemail system that we review daily, if not within about 48 hours. And so that way we can respond to the public without them waiting an hour, 2 hour, 3 hour, while we're trying to handle emergency calls at the same time. So trying to deal with that.
Good. I know we all love phone trees, but.
Oh, yeah. It's
better than waiting for hours.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep, and
Well, the biggest improvement is that staff, even if it's an enforcement, they can leave a voicemail. So instead of waiting on hold forever, they can just leave a voicemail. That's the biggest improvement right there.
Anything else for the good of the order? Okay, thank you very much.
thank you.
Next up, we have district report. They're out in the small cop.
Where would you like us to sit? You're okay? All right. Those are already wired. No, I'm just kidding.
Morning,
Well, John.
thank you for having us.
Okay, so we're now joined by Judges Fassbender and Smith, and they're gonna talk about district court, so take it away.
Thank you. Good morning, Judge Fossbender from Spokane County District Court. Presiding currently, Judge Smith here, assistant presiding currently. And so we do have our proposed 2025 district court budget. We've got a few slides.
I should also mention
on this
we've got
process. Okay.
John Witter, our administrator, and Sherry Hansen, our assistant administrator too. So can't leave them out.
No.
So.
No, definitely are backbones. All right, So we were asked to address how district court was gonna meet the 2025 budget target. What supplementary budget requests are being made to address the shortfall between 2025 and the needs of district court. I'm gonna be addressing those two items, and then I'll turn it over to Judge Smith, who will be discussing as far as the likelihood of district court to be able to fill vacant positions, as well as how the level of service would be impacted by that shortfall. And so if we can go ahead and go to the next slide. With regards to the judicial branch here, district court's 2024 budget was 7.276. As you can see, our general fund transfer in and the M&O are pretty much matching together at 7%. The bulk of our budget is staff salaries, and then coming in second is judicial salaries, of course. And so if we're going to go to the next slide, please. So with that, we were initially targeted to reduce our budget by 435,000. We actually superseded that, as you can see, and our reduction was 449,475. With that, we did go across our M&O budgets, and we're able to reduce those budgetary position or parts at 159,475. Then with that, currently we have unfunded this year one position. We added an additional position that we have reluctantly chosen not to fund to meet or match the budget reduction request. That comes in at the 136,895. And so with that, the balance that comes in at 153,000 shortly. We are very creative. District Court is always very passionate with regards to our budget, being very cognizant of our use of our citizens' funds. And so with that, we've got other fund sources that we can identify, and we're really creative with being able to do that. We've got other fund sources. We've got our 0.1% that does fund certain positions from the mental health therapeutic court, which Judge Smith can talk on further here. We also have civil DUFB funds that also fund a position. To make that up, also, we could potentially, if we're not rolling over any unspent salaries that we currently have, then we can also bring in TCIA, trial court improvement, which is not necessarily supposed to be funding positions. We currently fund 25% of a position, or 0.25 of one FTE with that right now. But we do have those other fund sources to ourselves to be able to cover that. Yes, Commissioner French.
Do you have just a ballpark? I don't need an exact number, but how much do you think that rollover looks like? Is that $20? Is that 200,000? What? Give me a ballpark.
And so right now, the unfunding of the two unfunded for one currently, and then we've got a second one identified as 136,895.
Okay, thank you.
Yes. And then so with that, the only ask that district court currently has right now, as far as a supplemental on the next slide, with that would be the 88,000, for which the Washington State Salary Commission did increase the salaries of our 8 elected judges for the judicial branch, and that became effective July of this year. And so that is the 88,000 that we're using currently as far as increasing our budget, and using the ask would be to use unspent salaries to cover that. Also, just recently, Washington Salary Commission also has a proposed budget or proposed increases for elected officials coming July of 2025. And so that's why that asterisk is in there. So we can identify that proposed number as it stands. It is not voted on just yet, but certainly we'll be asking to fund the judicial salaries increase as well. And as everyone here knows, it is a requirement that, according to the statute, that the 8 positions that are currently the elected positions do have to be funded. And so that is our supplemental budget request in that respect. Now, with that, if the amount is not rolled over to then cover the salary increase, of course, any remaining unspent salary, if it's not to cover and we're unable to fund that reluctantly, that's including layoffs of court staff. And that will significantly impact the district court with regards to service level. And so that's where I will now turn it over to Judge Smith to talk about those positions and how that's gonna impact district court as well as the county in that respect.
So, and just to be clear, we, we come with an ask of 88,000 to the supplemental budget request, but we come with a solution as well, and that is to tap into those unspent salaries. So, now, as far as vacant positions go, we currently have 4 positions that are unfilled. We have a court clerk position. We have an admin support staff specialist category 1, an administrative support staff 3, as well as a probation department position. So those are the 4 positions that we currently have that are not filled. The positions that we've kind of identified as kind of quote a layoff would be the 2 admin support specialist positions. And, just so you're aware too, if we were able to fund those positions, we're very confident that we could find people to fill those positions. We have our attrition rate is somewhere around 28%. And, I think that in large part, although we've done this, the salary studies and have tried to do our best from a county perspective to get salaries up, salaries compensation remains a kind of a barrier for retention and recruitment, but we're pretty confident that we could fill those other 2 positions if we were able to have the funding to do that. Next slide. The real kind of ground level impact of this is that if our supplemental request isn't fulfilled, it'll adversely impact our service level in several main ways. The first way would be just customer service hours. We on average have about 4,000 filings a month. And so it's a pretty significant number of folks interact with our court each day. Our numbers are up a bit. They're about 17% higher. Those are 2023 numbers. Our 2024 numbers are pretty close to that. So our numbers are up. And I think it's important just to remember that our branch, the judicial branch, helps facilitate the processing and collection of fines and fees from folks in our community. So if we weren't able to fill those positions, we'd run into an issue of the inability to process parking and civil infractions, et cetera. And you see the numbers there; they're not insubstantial. So there is a real life impact on the service level of being able to assist our constituents in our community. And I think that's it.
Yeah.
We wanted to really just give you kind of a 60,000 foot level, not get too granular, but we're both available for any questions that you might have.
Commissioner Walters?
Thank you for coming today, and I appreciate the exercise you guys went through to look for every opportunity to maximize what you do, but reduce your budget. So thank you. What are the 2 vacancies that you are willing reluctantly to leave unfilled for this next year?
Those are court clerk positions.
Okay.
Or the admin.
Or
Admin
I'm
assistant.
sorry, admin
Admin
assistant.
assistant, 2 admin assistant positions.
Okay.
Yeah. One is admin 1, the other is an admin 3.
3.
Yeah.
And if you were to make any additional more cuts, then you'd have to lay off people, is what you're saying. Right. Okay.
Can I ask where, so, and maybe I'm missing something. So you said your target reduction was the 449,000. The spreadsheet that we have, as you guys at 290, what's the adjustment? So what's the discrepancy between those 2 numbers?
So initially, the ask was 435,000, and
Okay.
that's what we had targeted. And then there was between the unspent salaries on 2 positions, there was that increase, the 449,000. So
Okay.
there's a bit of a difference on the positions that we identified that actually increased the number.
Okay.
Last year, when we did the adopted budget, we had
two vacancies built into the adopted budget.
Okay.
So their adopted budget would have been higher last year without those two vacancies. Last year end, they had 4 vacant positions. Today, they have 4 vacant positions. I'd say the year before that, I think it was 9, actually, it was district court at the end of 22 had 10.4 vacant positions, 21, 9.4, 24.4. So 4 seems like a consistent number if you look across. There was, you know, the 2021, 22 period, COVID, all that stuff. It got a little higher, but it seems like 4 is a fairly consistent number for an agency that size.
Okay. Okay. Thank you. Any other questions? Very, very concise, straight to the point. Well done.
To the point. Yeah, and so with that, I understand that you're gonna be going through a lot more of these and such, and so certainly. I don't know if there's a target deadline that we can be able to hear back with regards to our request.
Is it December 4th, we adopt the budget, or December 2nd?
December 2nd.
Yes, we adopt the budget.
All right, well, thank you so much. Appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Yeah, let's, yeah, mental health sales tax.
Yeah, so Justin's is in the conference room.
You and Justin do.
Yeah. The FT sheet that Randy was just referencing, I think is a good tool for the commissioners to take a look at, because we do have a number of departments who are reluctant to add their own vacancy adjustment, even though their trends clearly show that they always have vacancies. I don't know if in their mind they think, oh, if it's not funded, I can't fill it, but you're gonna fill positions. There's gonna be some that are vacant, you're gonna fill other positions. You're always going to have some level of vacancy in there, so.
People retire, people move on. I mean, there's always.
4 is a pretty safe one for district court, given they've been up to 9 and 10 in the last couple of years as well.
Okay. All right. Justin, take it away.
Ron, we've got mental health sales tax. Sent out late this morning, apologies for.
Was it in?
Kinda
is it in the
tiny.
Packet or is it?
It was
separate?
not in the packet.
Okay, I was looking at the list and I'm like, I don't know why Justin's here to talk about retail car rental sales. It's next on the list, but I
He's
mean,
gonna take over all our specialty taxes,
No.
maybe. That would be great.
yeah.
He's got enough to do.
So we will get this updated mental health sales tax sheet into your folder and out to you all. This aligns with our projected revenue for a 1/10 of 1% sales tax. These funds again are deposited into a special revenue fund. And we're expecting about $16.5 million in 2025. Various program uses as we go down, detention services gets a good allotment to support programs such as methadone, inmate mental health and substance abuse programs, as well as we utilize some of these funds to cover a portion of our NAF care contract within the jail. District Court, who is just here and described some staff covered by the mental health sales tax as a transfer in. That is about $1 million. It helps support part of a judicial officer and their staff to run courtroom programs. And then we have the public defender and prosecutor who have both alluded to having positions supported by mental health sales tax throughout their presentations. They receive funding for staff to help prioritize therapeutic courts in both the district and superior courts. We do, under district court, have an interlocal agreement with the city of Spokane to encourage their participation in the mental health therapeutic court through the district court. They don't operate their own in municipal court. They utilize the district court model. And then Superior Court has 2 separate programs. One is called Mental Health Court, one is called Co-occurring Drug Court. Those are both predominantly outsourced services or a therapeutic court coordinator that helps support the courts. It does not cover a judicial officer in either of those cases. And then we have a mental health professional in pretrial services that is supported by these funds. We also have a juvenile mental health counselor. That position is currently vacant and being supported by the detention mental health team. The sheriff's office has a contract for a mental health professional. They briefed it, I think, a couple months ago. It's an individual that supports deputies and their mental health treatment. And then we have the Involuntary Treatment Act Court, or ITA as we like to call it. This is a program that is coordinated and associated with Justin's team, primarily run by the courts. It's got Superior Court, Public Defender, Prosecutor, and Clerk. They typically have remote hearings, I believe, for individuals that have been involuntarily committed within a 72-hour window. They have to hold these hearings. Okay, they've changed that. That's good.
120, 14, 90, and then 180. And those are actually located in various locations as well, ENTs and the hospital. So they have separate courts located throughout our county.
And then we have the ASO portion of the funding that covers a myriad of different services that Justin can happily run through if he wants.
Yeah, so to support the work with the ITA court, the court evaluators is one of the largest costs. That is a requirement for the court to have them evaluate and provide testimony as part of the service. Individuals have that ability to both defend themselves and to have the state determine if they should remain for another 14. So that's a requirement as part of the court proceedings. The evaluation and treatment, this is allowed for the back and forth between ASOs if there's a Spokane County resident being treated in other areas and or for that treatment here. And then, of course, we do our step down. This is both of the Plant and Sunshine. This is a carryover from the RSN era, the BHO. This allows for individuals transitioning from an inpatient or more acute care setting to a lower level independent housing and supports both Medicaid and non-Medicaid individuals transitioning. Again, adds a certain amount of beds to remove people from having to be on the street or in a crisis center and then allow them to transition into independent housing. Then, of course, the transitional housing program is through our Phoenix. So it's 40 beds that provides transitional support over the 6-month period or longer, depending on the need, and provides integrated behavioral services as they transition out. Been the most successful in terms of ensuring people don't go back into Eastern State Hospital, the crisis system. And then, of course, we've got our ESPER program. Community hospitals is a catch-all for inpatient psychiatric treatment for individuals that are Spokane County residents in county. And then, of course, our supportive licenses and fees associated with the school-based program. And then NAMI support provides expanded engagement for families and residents of Spokane County. I think people are familiar with NAMI. This just allows for families to have that additional information gathering as part of behavioral services provided to their individuals. And then guidelines, these are required for the determination of individuals under medical necessity as part of our contracted work through the ASO. And then we, of course, had additional costs associated with running all of these programs. Now, here's the good news. You see 7 million has been allocated in 2024. We were able to almost, I think, 90% of that offset is state dollars. So we actually saved money this year because I found other people to pay for it. That will not be carried over into 2025. Unfortunately, that was a one-time deal, but actually we saved a certain amount of funding. So although that is currently our allocation for what we would need to run it as we look to 2025, it's much less than actuals that were spent in 2024. And then, of course, the two remaining ones, I don't know if you want to talk on this or
Go for it.
There's a set aside for Crisis Relief and Sobering Center project, looking at ensuring that there's money there in case other monies don't come through with the state or other partnerships. It's just a safety net for ensuring the continuity of that project. And then the liability reserve is a carryover from outstanding inpatient requirements as part of our contract with state. If we were to, and commissioner said, you're done, we don't want to do the ASO anymore, heaven forbid, it's a wonderful program, but let's say that's what they did. There would still be 2 years worth of outstanding liability for inpatient services. Anyone knows who's got a medical bill, sometimes those come a year later. And that's what hospitals could do. So they can seek that liability for up to 2 years. So that's to protect the county from those liabilities from any other fund source. So that is the mental sales tax.
Commissioner Weldon?
So, you mentioned that in the case, if you scroll up a little bit, the Superior Court, is there an opportunity to, if Superior Court is providing, you said it doesn't pay for any of the judicial officers, but could it? If it's related to mental health and drug treatment?
I believe it could, from a context of what the funds are allowed to pay for. I think the legal opinion we need to review is whether or not it could potentially be supplanted. Mental health sales tax does have some supplanting language in it, so we have to be careful to ensure that it's only new programs added or new things. We cannot go back and change our mind on a funding.
Okay. Okay. But we are using the dollars, you said it mostly in the district court to cover a lot of those judicial costs. Okay, so that was just something decided way back when, and we just didn't do that for Superior Court.
The other side of this that's not shown with the mental sales tax is we also utilize other funds to pay for the direct treatment services. So criminal justice treatment $9 or CJTA do pay for all of the treatment services, and we have about $700,000 annually that go into that. Which is why I think they also shifted to cover some of the supportive services to benefit from the direct treatment. That staff was needed to support that work.
Got it, okay, thank you.
So probably gonna have to rely on Tessa's memory here. Mine's kind of foggy. But before COVID, Jim, you might remember, before COVID, we used to have a veterans court and a drug therapy court. And I don't believe we have either one of those anymore. Didn't they fall victim to COVID, or do we still have those courts in place? We still have them?
I believe they're both still,
Okay.
yeah, programs
Alright.
both still alive and well. I think some of the
District court.
referrals have changed. So people may be
Maybe that's
getting
what it
engaged
is
with
that
the
I'm
program.
thinking about.
Yeah, the numbers aren't quite as large as I believe they were pre-COVID.
Yeah, because I remember both those courts being much more active than they are now and stuff, so maybe that's it. Okay.
Well,
Well, the district court, or I'm not district, I'm sorry, the drug court really saw the reduction with the Blake decision. That really impacted the amount of folks that were willing to go through it. What didn't Superior Court also stand up a DB court, a specialized
Yeah.
DB
There's
court?
been discussion about it, but I don't think it's actually.
I thought they did. I thought they got one grant funding where they stood. Did they do like 1 year of it?
They're still evaluating it.
Oh, are they? Okay.
and the drug court was rolled up into therapeutic court for the co-occurring. We expanded that because we saw a dip in the drug court. We saw an increase of co-occurring. People were coming into mental health court, but also having drug related. We were able to convince the state to free up dollars. So technically it's still alive and they're using those funds. And actually their numbers have increased because we've allowed for that expanded engagement.
On this list of, so this is a proposal for 2025. Is that what this document is?
Yep.
So what is new versus what would have been on that list from 24? If any.
Primarily, that would be in our the Crisis Relief Center would have been new.
Yep.
Reserve holdover, and then we added
In the extension of
Esper.
Bert.
Esper would have been expansion, but it would have, I think I made the request in 2023 for 2024, so we would have presented that as part of it, but that would have been a change, an increase in the service coverage. Cheney, East Valley, and Freeman.
Anything else on there that's new?
I don't know if there was an increase.
Don't believe anything new anywhere else in there. I think there are other ongoing conversations. One related to an ARP award, I believe, that maybe
Yeah.
switching over to be covered by mental health sales tax. That decision hasn't been kind of finalized, so we did not incorporate it here, but there's one-time funding and some retained reoccurring revenue
That
that
might be,
could be utilized for that.
but by and large, the vast majority of that is continuing past decisions and reflecting what the amounts. would be
Updated
for-
costs. Yep.
Okay, thank you.
Which leads into my conversation, because I actually do have some asks that would expand some of that service.
Sure you do. I'm sure they're good ideas.
Yes.
But thanks for clarifying.
Take it away.
All right. So,
I think we got PowerPoint here. So this is an update to our work with the first part of this is an update to the opiate funds, the STARS contract that the board approved for us to move forward and begin the process of engaging. There's been some changes to that, some new plans that would better enhance and engage our service really for the amount of money that's been awarded. So we are not, there's no change to the amount the board originally approved for this project, 1.2 million. But there is a change in terms of how that investment will look like. So that's when we're presenting the board for approval moving forward to continue to explore this. I believe the plan that we have that will be presenting here is a better use of the dollars. So that's my preface, as well as a greater investment in return for the county in the long run. So keep that in your mind as I go forward on this, because there's going to be some confusing parts because there's two essentially investments we're looking to implement as part of this. Both will be coming at different times if the board approves moving forward. So originally, the board approved us move forward with providing sobering and triage services with STARS as part of the RFP selection. They are going to be doing that at their Cali location. So next slide. The goal for that was to individuals to have immediate 23-hour, 59-minute, sort of like what we're planning for the crisis relief, but in a lesser sense. The crisis relief allows for a greater and more comprehensive engagement. This would provide the sobering for individuals experiencing any substance use, as well as triage for any behavioral health conditions that are non-urgent or acute, meaning they wouldn't need to have the hospital. So that was what we originally presented the board. That would be a renovation of an existing and startup costs with us to carry the remaining service after the first year with existing state or other dollars that we have available, really to get this program up and going and then implement it. However, in conversation, and it's been a while since I put this forward, we found out some new information from STARS that actually is in a better position to look at strategic 5 years down the road. So next slide. So I am recommending, based on this new information, that we tweak our plan a little bit. So STARS was awarded a direct appropriation from the legislature last year, as well as some competitive grants to build out their program and to purchase the Cali location. Currently, they're renting it, and that's an exorbitant cost. And they have the right of first refusal to purchase this in a 3-year contract. They're nearing the end of that with the appropriation in 2025. So what they need is an initial development investment to purchase it up to 25% of the total cost associated with it. Commerce will cover the rest. So in conversation with them, Commerce had reached out, and we had been talking with them about what would that look like in partnership if they were to purchase it. Currently, they're doing withdrawal management services there. With the basement is where we had planned to do the other services. So instead of just renovating it and not supporting a purchase of the building, which could limit our availability of services there over the next 5 years, they weren't able to purchase it or they lost their grant, we could lose the service availability. Not only that, we would be making all those investments and improvements without being able to reap the benefits of that if they ended up having to sell it. So Commerce and our conversation was, what if we joined that partnership with Commerce to help them purchase that building, not a county building, but a STARS building, but we would invest in the development 25%. That would use up a proportionate share of the dollars already allocated. That would give us a 15-year contract in conjunction with Commerce, where they would have to provide the services to the community. And we would get priority for the existing services of withdrawal management. Our previous plan would only let us have the access to the sobering and triage and the withdrawal management if we had availability for it. But by helping them purchase this, not only do we get priority for those withdrawal management not leaving the area, and Spokane residents would have primary access, we'd also have direct coordination between the sobering and triage in the basement upstairs. Would further expand our bed from a planned 15 to 20 to the entirety of the withdrawal management upstairs, and vice versa between withdrawals management or individuals transitioning from other programs. So we get access to that. It's a better investment in terms of ensuring that they remain stable. They are committed for the next 15 years to providing that expanded service. And I think we know bed availability has been challenging with withdrawal management, as well as priority access for Spokane County residents, which would mean instead of taking external individuals from other regions, they would prioritize ours. And then we would get first access from those going into the sobering and triage from downstairs to the upstairs. We've been working with Department of Health on this. What if we also use some of the bed availability upstairs? IMD exclusion prevents that they have a certain number of beds upstairs. So when Cali was run by Daybreak, they had a residential treatment and a stabilization for kids. With them gone, they have 2 units that are entirely separated, 16 and 16. That would give us another 16 bed potentially to explore with them upstairs to be able to utilize. Again, the plan of paying 25% down and then using the remaining for startup, and then I would cover the remaining ongoing operations with state dollars. This would, like I said, benefit the county by increasing bed capacity, but more importantly, ensuring a continuity and sustainable service for the long term. So that's what I'm recommending to the board is we proceed forward with this joint partnership with Commerce, as well as the triage and sobering services, instead of just the sobering and triage services that we initially planned. Scott, I don't know if you want to add anything to that.
I think you've covered it very artfully.
Is there a catch? Is there a but? I mean, it sounds really good. Is there some potential pitfall or downside?
Waiting for the second shoe.
Yeah.
It requires stars to follow through with Commerce. So what we have said is we would need the Commerce's contract. They've already committed to that direct appropriation. The money is set aside. Once that has been evaluated, then they would have that final agreement in place. We would not trigger our payment to stars until that contract was completed with Commerce. So it'd be a joint one. And then we would pass those dollars to the stars. And once that's in place, our contract would mirror Commerce's. So we have some assurances. If they don't do that, we still have the plan to move forward with our sobering and triage. I did not want to lock us down into anything without the board's approval, but more importantly, ensure the greatest flexibility. So the pitfall there would we just lose that investment of the long term. In the short term, they're there for another 2 years. Technically, their lease comes up in 2 years, and they would lose that ability. But there's $4 million they're sitting on the table that they need to utilize. What they don't have is the capital right up front. Part of this is if we do that, we've asked that they use their other Commerce dollars, which you got competitive grant, which I think is somewhere near 1.8 million, to actually renovate the space. So we get their dollars to renovate if we're investing in purchasing it. So really, the 2 for investment for us. We don't have to pay the renovation costs, just shifting those to doing the development costs. So minimal potential shoe to drop on this situation. We put certain agreements in place, or at least that's what we would do moving forward, if board approved, that would protect us from that occurring, putting us in a difficult position. It's what took us 3 months to negotiate this.
So worst case scenario, if for some reason they don't access the funds that have been set aside because they can't fill out the Commerce paperwork or whatever it is, we still get 2 years of sobering beds for our community.
Right.
Okay. So what's the dollar amount again that you're working within?
1.2 million.
Okay.
With, board approved of
Of the opioid settlement, okay.
We're rough estimate is somewhere near $775,000 for the 25% down. We're still waiting on their final evaluation. Then we are projecting $600,000 for startup costs in the first year, not all of it opiate. So I think opiate dollars would comprise 400,000 of it, the rest would be my state dollars. And then operationally, once they're up and running, the annual contract would be somewhere near $400,000 to run the program. We wanted to scale up, we would have that ability upstairs. That's the cool part about them locking them into that. You have scalability.
Well, we desperately need those beds, those sobering beds and the treatment. Withdrawal management, I mean, we need more access to people in our community, so thank you for all your hard work on this.
Yeah.
You feel pretty because one of the reasons that Stars, as I understand it, closed their sobering beds, like what, 4 years ago? But they just couldn't make it work financially, is that accurate?
I think previous leadership at their level had made some investments in other areas, and they became too heavily invested in areas that are now have new leadership, and they're constricting back down to
Kind of core services, okay.
And before we even entered this agreement, we wanted to ensure that they're actually being able to operate in Dubai. And that is somewhere where they're currently now finally doing. They're having proceeds come in that surpass their current expenses, but we're moving the rental. That's the other part. We look at the investment. We're also locked into 15 years of not having to pay rent. We put that in the agreement as well. So
And that'll really help them stay in the black and
exactly.
be able to invest that in other ways.
Okay. Any other questions?
I was gonna make a comment.
Go for it.
So still accomplished the same end result, improved it. And stayed within the dollars. It's a different path to get there, but still getting the same place plus.
Yeah. Instead of just 10 or 15 beds, we could scale up to potentially 24 to 25. So I think that's a benefit, especially as we look towards aggressively online for a little while.
Right.
And then when that does come online, we can scale down the beds so that the use of the facilities would not be, that's one of the biggest issues is maintaining milieu status so that they can be profitable to run. And by shifting those, we can better accommodate, and we have ability and leverage to do so now.
Sounds good.
So I see 4 head nods. Excellent.
Can't believe Mary didn't support this.
Meeting. And Ron, I think there's 2 other slides in there. And there's 2 other requests we'll put forward. The board approves us to begin exploring. Next slide. Yes, so part of the conversation we've been having with the community, I think we've all seen, is the need for additional beds and supportive engagement. So one area that we think would be beneficial to support youth that was provided by our department in the past, but was kind of went away with promise that Medicaid and the state would cover and has not, is youth respite. This allows for supports for families where kids are experiencing behavioral conditions where the parents are generally the primary provider. They just need somewhere for them to go to have a break. We all know that sometimes just 48 hours from a stressful situation can provide a wealth of recovery for families who are providing the primary care. This was really beneficial to reduce acute care. Recognizing now that Providence's PCCA is closed, we are looking at needing to support more of that for families in the community. This includes any youth that's experiencing it. Families are needing that break. One of the predominant users are individuals who have adopted kids, and they're starting to realize there's challenges associated with acuity and responding to that, and just needing 48 hours to reset so the family can bring them back and provide a more stable and wholesome environment. This is actually one of the cheapest investments that we can make that actually provide the greatest number of engagement with family. So that's one area we'd like to expand our service to youth, reinitiate this program and use mental health sales tax for Spokane County residents. And this was always a Spokane resident program as well. The second area we'd like to expand is making beds that are currently not being utilized available. Right now, at any given time, milieus at some of the inpatient facilities here locally are running at 75 to 80, some of the residential even lower. We could use more of those expanded coverage. Currently, I'm limited to paying non-Medicaid individuals up to 220% federal poverty level. State dollars won't let us go beyond that. So for a family of four, that's like $48,000, right? So it's, I'm surprised they don't meet qualification for Medicaid, but it would be anyone beyond that. We are recommending the board free up us to be able to cover individuals up to 350% federal poverty level. That would cover a family of four up to $78,000 to $80,000 a year. Looking at two incomes at $40,000 that may not have good health coverage, that need that behavioral health treatment, that are currently not able to access it because their insurance won't pay for it, and I can't cover it. This would increase bed availability, allow our department to do the medical necessity. Right now, one of the biggest challenges that SRSC has is that when law enforcement drops them off, if they don't meet medical necessity, then they're turned away. They can't receive the bed access. And oftentimes law enforcement know what that access is in advance, so those individuals go to other places. By allowing us to be able to have expanded coverage and we can determine what medical necessity is, we can cover those individuals to a greater extent and give more latitude to what is allowed to be treated in the facility that other insurances don't. This benefit, because this area is primarily private insured individuals that are usually on catastrophic plans that have large deductibles but can't afford the psychiatric treatment. So we're recommending increasing bed availability by allowing us to have that, as well as the youth respite. Next slide. I estimate, and this is a rough estimate, that it should not exceed $550,000 annually. So this would be a small investment to support widely supported programs that could increase bed availability. At any point, the board could reduce that amount for the behavioral expansion, and we go back to state dollars. The youth respite, from what we've heard, has been a need for some time.
Questions?
So let's do it.
All right, I see 4 head nods.
Four more head nods.
Excellent. All right. Well, this is great. Every time I got yes with all the money, that's perfect.
From the former slide, Tessa, there was about, not including the set asides, it's about maybe 1.5 in capacity in mental health sales tax. So this 550 would still fit in underneath what the revenue stream provides.
And with how I'm able to usually offset a lot of the mental sales tax every year, we don't envision that the usage will be as high as we allocate. That's when I always go back and forth on this one. We always ensure that we're covered, but I end up saving money. And if we have just one more second, there's a slide that I don't have that I would like to throw out to the board, just as a percolating thought, now that I have your time. Real quick, I promise. This last year, we experienced a lot of fires in our region, and our team went out and provided the disaster behavioral office. That's Ashley's team that went out, which is county staff. We were located in each of the areas, support centers. Yeah, and we were there all day, every day, for the weeks that they were running, supporting the families. We were doing so out of our dollars associated with the state. We would like the board to consider the idea that we have a small amount set aside for disaster response, behavioral response, in the event those do occur, that when we do, heaven forbid, we don't want that to occur, but we see changing landscape, that allowing coverage and really to give breaks to staff so they're not there week in and week out, because they're also there on weekends covering engagement, freeing up some contracts for external providers to bridge the gap. Right now, everything's volunteer. We run this for the entire region. We're requesting that for Spokane County, we might be able to free up some funds. I don't expect to be more than $50,000 we may or may not even use. Like I said, I'm really great at finding dollars from the state. Having that in reserve just in case an event occurs would put us in the best position and still allow county staff to do a lot of the engagement, which we found to be very beneficial. And the county residents found very comforting when we were there for the weeks that we were outside.
continue to explore. I'll probably come back for an ask, but just want to throw it out there. My staff did a wonderful job. It was really cool to see county individuals providing crisis relief. to the community.
Okay,
Excellent. Thank you.
thank you. Right, I noticed we did have some bullet points for retail.
Yep.
Retail car rental, historic preservation fund, capital budget.
Yes. And Ron, I know we sent those to you kind of late this morning. Thank you. The first one is the Historical Preservation Fund. We have a contract with the city of Spokane to support them. It ends in 2024. The last 3 years, we contributed 40,000 to them. Current fund balance is projected to be just over $500,000 next year. We'll have about 60,000 come in revenue. We did apply for a $1 million grant. It was a 50% match grant for the courthouse on the exterior. So we are setting aside that $500,000. That would leave us about 148,000, but we do not have a placeholder in for the City of Spokane Historical Preservation. I know they have had an ask. That was more than the 40,000. I believe their amended ask was like 50,000 for 2025 with some, I believe it was 2.5% escalators in the following years. But just looking for the board's recommendation as to what you want to do, because we do need to get a contract, or we would like to put a contract in place before this one expires. They would like us to do that. And I know legal has worked on it, but we're just waiting for what amounts should we plug into that contract.
Yeah, it looks like it's 50 for 2025, and then it goes up to 51, 250, and then it goes up to 52.5, and so that there's escalators that they emailed us. Can I ask, how many properties did they put on the historic registry in the county last year? I mean, my recollection, it's like 1 or 2 a year, right?
I think they've only been in a couple times.
It varies.
Yeah.
It depends upon how many property owners actually want to be on the registry, and so we've had, I know that several years ago, the landmarks Commission Historic Preservation did very, very little work in the county, and yet we were paying them and stuff, so we went back, we renegotiated the contract with them and said, hey, you gotta up your ante in the unincorporated area. They have been doing that. I know that, like in Medical Lake, we're working with him on restoring that theater facility out there. They've invested into a restorative barn program and some other properties. Rod Sprague and those guys have got properties they put on the registry and stuff. So it's more active now than it was. But there's a lot of county.
Yeah.
So I don't, proportionally, I don't know how much what the relationship is between city and the county anymore.
Okay. Yeah, no, and so are these dollars going to the preservation of
No,
those properties?
They're going to pay for, as I understand, they're going to pay for staff.
Yeah.
To go after grant money.
Okay.
And so it's the grant money that they're going after as well as, the preservation efforts are to work with property owners to get them on to the registry as well. So it's paying for that staff effort as well. That fairly accurate?
I believe so. Yeah, I believe it's the two individuals that we've had come speak to us is predominantly what
Okay.
the dollars support.
Okay.
It does seem like I don't know when you had that conversation about refocusing more on outside the city, but it does appear that they have done that with the barn work, with the Medical Lake, like working with those communities to actually let them know about that they have the opportunity to get on the lists and what that does for the community.
So I think now, Medical Lake has now entered into an agreement with the city Historic Preservation Office. But it was as a result of the county working with them on restoring the.
Oh,
the
right,
theater.
right.
And that's when they said, oh geez, we ought to be part of this. And so they got on board, but the conversation with the city actually happened back when Shelley was here and, pre-COVID, we had to come to better understanding.
But the 40,000's been fairly flat, I guess,
It-
and that's what they're asking for, is to catch up with the cost of the office.
And I did have a conversation with Megan DeVol. And I said, you know, you might have a better chance at coming to us 26 as opposed to 25. Because I said 25 is gonna be a tough year and I don't see the board wanting to increase. And so, but yeah,
So I guess it's really a two-part question. One, do you want a multi-year contract or a one-year contract? Just for 25, and two, what the amount is that you would like. Contract or series of amounts if it's a multi-year contract.
Yeah, as I understand this is, these funds would go to pay for the two individuals, with the city of Spokane, so it's.
Right.
Supporting their costs as they support efforts in the county. Because we don't have dedicated resources to do that. Don't know whether or not, I mean, sure, their costs are going up, everyone's costs are going up. I don't know if the activity levels in the county, the unincorporated are going up. That's, I think, an important piece to be able to have some visibility into. If your costs are going up, but you're doing 20% less work in the county, well, then you can't justify an increase to $50,000. I don't know what that. I don't have that visibility into their activities. I don't know what they're doing.
An increase of 10,000, right?
Yeah,
From 40 to
I say, yeah, 40 to
You
50.
said an increase of 50.
Oh, yeah, 250. That's what I meant, yeah.
Just
Yeah, I
checking,
don't know what
just
the
making sure. I
distribution
was-
of this.
I think it's good that the county has representation to help identify and work on these programs. They're maintaining the existing historical preservation registry. So there's definitely efforts that are going on. I just don't know the body.
I mean, I feel comfortable sticking at 40, honestly. You know, I mean, and if some of that's us pushing out programs like the Department of Archaeology and Historic Preservation, which is a state program, you know, for barn preservation. I mean, that's something I'm sure, you know, we could push out amongst our avenues, you know, as well. I mean, based on what I'm seeing, I mean, it looks like the state has those programs in place as well. Maybe that's where we direct folks if that's the assistance they're looking for, but you know, like you said, I mean, it takes a property owner that wants to have a property become a historic, you know, as a historic site. And I mean, I don't know, it's been like 1 or 2 a year. And so, I mean, is that worth $40,000 of taxpayer money? And
Perhaps we could negotiate a little bit. I like the idea of doing an increase and then having just a set increase each year so we know. But it sounds like there hasn't been an increase since 2021. So, I mean, I do think there's value in the program. I agree with what you're saying. Maybe they need to explain to us how much they leverage the dollars to, you know, how much grant money they've brought in the last several years, because that would help.
Yeah, it's been a while since we've had an update from them.
Because I agree with you that the funding does then leverage other funding. But I'm not sure how much.
Would you like to schedule Megan to come in and provide an overview with this request and provide some insights as to what the level of funding would go to increase, what the increased level of funding would go to compared to what their, you know, their work effort is throughout the unincorporated. Would that be helpful? Then you guys can kind of make a decision on funding and the length
Whether
of
it should
term.
be a 3 or 5
Yeah.
or just a 1 year.
And we can at least for the time being put a placeholder in here, so we're trying to get some of these other special revenue funds tied up with board intent of what they want to do it. And with the fact that we've committed a lot of the dollars for this is a primary source of funds for doing improvements to our courthouse. And you can see it's not growing very much.
But yeah, I would welcome her coming in, give us an update. We can let her know to talk about leveraging other grant funds that have come into especially the unincorporated or small cities. Be good.
I'll work with Gene on that.
All right, the next page is the car rental tax. This is the tax, you will see on your. Let me see, let me start over. So Spokane Sports Commission, their contract ended in 2023. The board had asked us to get a contract together for 2024 in the same amount. That resolution is on your consent agenda for tomorrow. They have signed that agreement. 2025, we have not put anything in there for Spokane Sports. The other thing that this fund can be used for is primarily like Plants Ferry. So it can be used for youth sports. And I know we are doing a major remodel out there. Before we make a decision, I just want to flip to the next page. And I know it's probably an eye test but here's different sources of money where we pay Spokane Sports. So they get funds from 2 different areas. The first is the tourism promotion area, which is a tax that you pay if you stay at a hotel. And Jim can tell me who, but there is a group, the Hotel Motel.
That's self-imposed.
It's a self-imposed tax, but they determine how it is split out. It primarily goes to 2 entities right now. It goes to Visit Spokane and it goes to Spokane Sports.
Visit Spokane.
Visit.
And Visit Spokane gets the remaining portion.
Right. And in 24, that allocation was changed. And they also had an increase of $1 in the self-imposed tax. So that is why for the 10 months of 24, Spokane Sports has received more from the tourism promotion area than they did in 23. And then of course, the car rental tax, we have left that flat at 220 for the last 3 years. So just to give you context, the 220 isn't their only money, just to put that. Now we go back to the preceding page, Ron.
And I actually, just during this meeting, I got the packet because where the TPA is meeting on the 23rd, so in
Okay.
2 days. And so the forecast for 2025 is Visit Spokane. And Visit Spokane gets just under 65%, and then Sports Commission gets just over 35% of the split. Sports Commission off the TPA is forecasted to get about 1,736,000.
So the question on the car rental tax is, are we going to allocate any of that to Spokane Sports in 2025? And really another ask that I know Doug would have and Scott would have also is on Plants Ferry to allocate a large portion of this fund balance because we have a very large project going on out at Plants Ferry. And Scott, I'll let you jump in there.
Yeah, we've talked about this on a number of occasions. So the current status is Doug and his team working with the Progressive Design build firm. They're getting close to the end of validation, so they're gonna have a pretty good idea. And he's scheduled to come in, I believe, on the 28th.
I believe so.
Exactly, to the commissioners, what the overall Camas Meadows Plants Ferry Park validation is gonna look like, and how close or far away we're going to be able to achieve the amount of build out that we're looking for. I'm anticipating that we will be short Plants Ferry. I think we've got some other sources for Camas Meadows with some reprioritization that Doug's also gonna present. Knowing that we're going to likely need some more dollars, I'm advocating that the commissioners set aside a pretty good portion of that fund balance. We decided to put some to Spokane Sports Commission, you know, at least up to $1 million towards Plants Ferry. You'll get more of a sense of an overview next week when Doug comes in and presents. I think this is gonna be a pretty big need, and this is a good, useful fit of the car rental tax.
So in terms of the sports commission, I know that there was some sort of, like, we had approved that 220 earlier in the year, right? And there was kind of a.
We talked about it, but never approved it, never got the contract completed, and I'll say I dropped that ball, I'll just say.
So I would like to give them the opportunity to come in at least, if they have an ask for the retail car tax, rental car tax. And hear about like how they've been spending the money. Or what they plan to use this year's money toward. I know they've gotten some really good exciting news that they did book that cross-country national meet at the new cross-country facility. And they booked men's, anyway, there's a lot of things coming to Spokane, so it sounds like they've been fairly successful in marketing the sports opportunities here. So anyway, I would love to get an update, and if they have an ask, let them make the ask.
Why don't we?
But I agree that there's funding that can be used for the Plants Ferry project, so I want to make sure we look at all the options.
Well, why don't we, Tess and I were just chatting, we'll try to get Megan in on November 4th for during your budget session to talk about the ILA with City of Spokane. And we'll also have Gina work with the Sports Commission to come in on that day as well. Present what it is they're requesting, and we start to fill out some of these lines up here.
Just a question, Scott, so you're saying of the projected 1.5 ending balance, you'd like to see about $1 million for Plants Ferry?
I think we're gonna need that, and again, you'll get a better sense of how the financial deck's coming together. I still think we're gonna be short, and we're gonna need some state help. And it's really gonna be in the, at least Plants Ferry, are we gonna get 1, 2, or 3 artificial turf lit fenced fields? That's gonna be the question. So how far along I'm comfortable we'll get 1. With some of our funds, we might get to 2, might be a little bit short, but it's that 3rd one that's gonna need some, hopefully some state help or some other dollars that can come to bear.
And a reminder, this has to be used for like youth or non-professional.
Yeah, Ron, if you can scroll
Sorry, I
up
think
the
it says
uses,
that's
yeah. apologize.
Okay. Right. Okay, great.
Yep, so Plants Ferry does fit into the eligible uses of it. Okay, could we, at least for the present time, are you okay with us putting $1 million placeholder for Plants Ferry and a 220 in there for Spokane Sports Commission? Okay.
Put those in as placeholders and have them come back. The next piece is really very hard to see on, Ron, I don't know if we sent it to you.
He's got the Excel up.
Okay, this is the capital improvement plan, which is why we printed it out. Because if you try to view that on Excel on screen, it doesn't look very.
And this updated version, we did make some tweaks, is in your shared folder, so you do have an electronic copy you're able to download and work on if you don't want to just write it in on paper.
So these are, excuse me. So these are the capital asks that we have. As Tessa said, we have updated this a little bit. For example, we updated this for the hot water versus steam, high pressure steam conversation, where we have engaged an outside legal firm, to help us with that contract for JCI. We hope to have that back in the next couple of weeks. for review. Again, that's not saying how we're funding for it. Remember, we have 3 pistons. But that is just to say, to go through the contract and we can have a funding discussion at that time. And that one will be under facilities. We also added in here under detention services, a jail capacity remodel for $3 million. So that was an add that we've added in here as well. So really it's, and I don't know if you want to go through this in detail today, if you want to try to fit funding sources, or we just talk about the detail. But in your booklet, all the descriptions for these asks, other than the 2 I just talked about, are in your packet. You know, like scraps for the HVAC expansion, we may not, you know, be able to do those this year, may or may not. But you know, like clerk of courts, these are, you know, those are small items that could probably just be part of their capital budget, but if each one is over $5,000, then we have to capitalize them if individually, and he put it into the capital section. So since he left it out of the operating, we put it into the capital section.
And the clerk did comment verbally when he was here presenting to you all that if he was awarded other operating dollars, he may be able to forego these requests.
Detention services, again, there's a lot of Geiger asks in there for next year, which may or may not come to fruition. You know, maybe we can hold off on those until we have other discussions. And also, again, in there is 900, excuse me. There's $1 million. There it is. Jail module remodels. You know, we have $1 million. That's where they do a section of the jail each year. It was in the budget last year and we weren't able to do it because of capacity issues. We had no place to move the prisoners, so you couldn't do the remodel. So that just means you have to do maintenance. So the likelihood of that happening this year until we have some jail capacity remodel is probably low. Probably needs to do the jail capacity remodel before we can do any refurbishing of the other areas in the current jail. So, you know, it's kind of, it's stuff that needs to be done, but can we get it done next year? Do we actually allocate money to it?
My suspicions are that we're not gonna be in a position to do the jail module remodels, because you have to move people out of a wing so you can do them. We don't have the ability to do that, so that's likely gonna be picked out. And I would also, my instincts are, we're not going to, as Randy said, plug a bunch of money into Geiger at this point in time, given its condition. But the jail capacity remodel's likely a necessity for this next year, which is increasing some capacity in the annex and increasing some capacity in one of our wings over there that can get converted from, I think, more of a shared dormitory to in line with how the rest of the wings look like. And that's just an estimate right now. With scraps, I know we do need some investments out there, but I think until we get contracts in place with the other cities, that we can be confident we have capital recovery. Don't think those are ones that, one, we can afford, two, that we probably want to do at this point in time either. So that's just a couple of my commentary on that front page.
Is the 3 million, my question was just, is the 3 million just a total estimate?
Right now,
at
it
this
is a
point?
total spitball, is my understanding.
Okay, is that a
Official term.
official budget term?
That's
When
where
will
I
we-
grew up, yes.
When will we have a better number? Just
We get a designer on board to
Early
do
next
a
year,
design
maybe.
estimate, then that'll give us some, at least some maybe 30% confidence numbers on it.
We'll move from spitball to a guesstimate.
Beyond a
All
wag.
great projects start as a spitball.
Yeah.
okay.
But what would that, Mike, from your standpoint, when would we anticipate being able to bring a designer on board? I mean, I know we have to have a commissioner.
As soon as that approval.
Yeah.
We can start working on it.
Yeah.
So if I have 4 head nods today, then.
But I agree, like, you're gonna have to have more space to then move folks to be able to do renovations of other parts, so it seems like you start with remodeling areas where you can create that additional space.
Yep.
So if we had not for Mike to go get a designer.
Go get somebody.
One.
To get from spitball to guesstimate.
Yes.
Yes.
Oh, Mike, you got your head nuts. That's kind of the first page. Second page is the facilities. Again, the first one on there is the involves around the presentation we had a few weeks ago regarding staying with high pressure steam or going to hot water. Right now, it is just showing is 1 year. If you remember that cash flow was actually over 3 years, 25 to 27. If we go with the hot water method, it was a 3-year period, depending on when you start that project. But I would say right now it'd be 25 to 27. Again, we had different ways to fund for that, which we haven't made a decision on yet. But there are multiple ways that could be funded, whether it be fund balance, whether it be ARP clawback, whether it be a debt issuance. Again, those you can play with those pistons and move them around to get to that number. That is a future discussion. Yes.
Question. Does that include the switchboard?
It doesn't, it does include all, this does include the switch gear, all the air handling units. This is the full project. The hot water portion of this is about 25 million. All the other stuff that we have to do, no matter what, is about an additional 11. It comes in at about 35.5. 36 is rounded up.
And I think it's helpful to do all the projects in one fell swoop for readiness and, they'll have people on site, they'll be able to do things in waves. That kind of is a better strategic planning for these improvements overall.
I hope that's a typo on the roof replacement.
That is a fun one. We just wanted to see if anyone would catch it.
We can almost build a new courthouse for that.
That is
Thank
dependent upon what historical preservation will let us do to replace that.
Currently, the roof is slate. And
If we have to stay
redo
with slate, it will
it's-
be very expensive.
Very expensive.
If we can do architectural,
Look alike.
shingles.
Yeah, they
that
they
look
have, they
like
make
slate.
stuff that
They do,
looks like.
they do,
Yeah,
it will be a lot less, so, but.
And you guys wanna give these historic preservation people more money? Huh?
Maybe they
Look
don't
what they're
allow
doing to us,
change.
guys.
Maybe they can help us figure out a different path here.
Special project.
Yes.
Yeah.
Historic preservation.
Yeah, that one did make our jaw drop a little bit. But that would be a slate replacement. Again, it's not something that has to happen next year. That's looking out a few years. But it eventually will be on. But if we can use architectural shingles that look similar to slate, it would be much less. So the 25 projects, again, the window replacements in the Public Works building, we should have that nailed down here in the next week or two. They are getting quotes right now. And so I don't know that it will be that much, but that is what we have set aside in ARP dollars for that one.
Just a question on that, is that the state funding that we got through?
I think we did get some state funding, if that does not change, but we had originally had ARP dollars.
750 is, I think, what we have gotten from the state designated account. Jeff and I were talking about that last week. So I think we'll.
That was for Public Works roof and
Yeah, it was a
Improvements, yeah,
broad
efficiency
broad
improvements,
category.
yep.
That's that project.
It relates to
Was that not also subject to the initiative not
Right.
being?
Yeah, that one possibly had a clawback on it. I don't know, Jeff's looking at it. I don't know that it actually had a matching provision in there, so we might be able to fully utilize that just for, I think the windows we're estimating around 250. It's a lot less than we thought. The rest could go for some rough stuff. So.
So we can use up to 750-ish of that state money for any kind of efficiency project.
It's, yeah, it's tied to efficiency projects to meet the clean buildings
Right.
requirements. They requested when we submitted the, what we call earmark request, that we include a match or have it for roughly 50% of the total cost. I do not believe a matching requirement was written to the language, but we did submit it for what at that point was Gil's estimate for 50% of roof. We were asked to pick one building, but we're not committed to that building. But we went with Public Works, and it was for roof, fetter, our value insulation, lifting the roof, the insulation, putting the roof back down, and windows.
So we could probably move that, identify that in a source of funds.
Yeah, we can put it as special revenue.
But if we needed to do some matching, it'd leave some.
We do currently have some ARP dollars set aside for that.
So then we should probably.
It'll be special revenue.
And some of the stuff in Broadway Center building, we're gonna take a hard look at whether those are necessary or not, given we know pretty close to knowing what the future of Monroe Court is and what that will likely be. We don't wanna throw a bunch of money at a building that we might be getting out of here in the near term.
And for example, the campus sidewalk replacement, that 550,000. We do have funds in the west quadrant TIF that could be used for that. If I'm correct, Mr. Mesa.
Yes.
What's that?
West quadrant TIF could be
Right.
used for the sidewalk.
Absolutely,
Eligible
right,
use of it.
one of the many purposes,
One of
one of
many.
the few purposes, there's about 5.
So again, that would be special revenue. It would not have to come out of general fund.
What would that sidewalk replacement entail?
I believe it's this front sidewalk, and we have been cited from the city of Spokane regarding it being a safety hazard.
How so?
The tree roots upraised and
What's the safety? of it? That's helpful to clarify. They didn't just call and pass you out.
Yeah, yeah. Well, it would have been Gil, so.
Carrier pigeon.
Yeah,
Across the
no,
river.
it's the tree roots have made quite the upheaval out there, so there are lots of points of pitching and I think some holes where
we have where like they're trip hazards.
Yeah.
Okay, got it.
they're not accessible at all.
So that would be special revenue. Again, any BCB stuff, we will take that and put that on hold. For example, like the AC system, we probably won't be spending $200,000 on that building.
Gil's team has worked hard to put some Band-Aids on the systems over there, so they should last another year. Fingers crossed.
Fair and Expo.
Yeah, one thing I just came to mind here, we're probably also gonna wanna put in facilities, some remodeling costs for Monroe Court. I think when we did this last year, it was that identified amount in REIT. Where that's where we actually ended up moving it from. It was originally gonna be ARP, then.
We talked ARP interest.
Oh, yeah, okay. So I think that's another one we'll wanna have on here for estimate of remodel costs, at least for the initial.
Did we have it rent also? Income, is there enough to do?
I don't think we have a.
Okay, because I couldn't remember. I have to go look at that spreadsheet.
How much beyond it, when
Yes.
the M&O would come.
Right,
from it.
that's what I couldn't remember offhand.
So we have talked using ARP interest. I think it's about 400,000 at this point.
I think so.
They're probably over.
Probably over.
Last time we were pushing for. The one upside is people not spending.
So yeah, we'll add kind of general campus remodels on here. Good call out, Scott.
For Fair and Expo, a lot of their projects for next year, special revenue. Most of that is the credit enhancement that we will get from the PFD where the final payment is next year. So that will cover a lot of the, again, that credit enhancement can only be used for things that the PFD could also do, which basically means we have to spend it out at the fairgrounds. Because it has to have a certain cost threshold and it has to be around for a certain period of time. And I don't believe Plants Ferry quite met that threshold yet, so the fairgrounds would be the only place we could do it. And so they have a number of projects that they're looking at doing. Scott is more familiar with these projects than I would be.
Yeah, the shower restrooms, campgrounds, as well as the campground improvements have been just kind of around raising the quality of that. Right now, the people who stay at the campgrounds have to go to one of the buildings to use one of the restrooms or the showers in there. And so this is actually building a designated restroom and shower that can be used year round, and then really improving the campground park itself to attract people during more parts of the season as opposed to just during events. So those are the two biggest ones, and you'll see a couple of minor things around the Wi-Fi improvements around the facility.
Information technology, they have a 7-year plan for IT to replace the hardware, primarily servers and things like that, switches. The last year and this year are the biggest 2 years in that 7-year cycle. We actually do have ARP dollars set aside to cover the general funds portion of these amounts for 2025. And then as you can see, the following years, the next 5 years are much lower. And then we'll get through that cycle again, 6 and 7. So 31 and 32 will be higher cost years, but they have this stuff on a 7-year cycle. This is the highest year cost, but fortunately we do have some ARP dollars for this year. So that will move from undesignated to special revenue. Let's see.
And just to clarify, where you do see the grayed out boxes, like IT is not eligible to be funded by either REIT 1 or REIT 2.
So yeah, I should have updated that for special revenue. That's my mistake on that.
Which one is that again?
The IT section.
Which project?
All 1.4 million for the current year.
Okay.
Again, yeah, that 7-year cycle, this is the highest cost year. So 2032, if we stay on that 7-year cycle, will be the next highest cost year. It's where we may want to start looking at doing an ER&R fund thing for IT. So you're putting the same amount away every year to plan for those costs going out in the future. Juvenile, these are their requests for next year. I don't believe we had any special revenue identified for those.
In the detention bathroom and kitchen remodel, you'll remember from Juvenile's presentation, they had the individual trying to step into the really small bathroom. That is the bathroom and kitchen remodel that we started to fund in 2024, and there's a second portion of funding needed to complete the project in 2025. So we would like to prioritize that one as far as decision making, since it is an ongoing project.
And when we meet with Doug next week, we'll have REIT 1 and REIT 2 sheets available for you too. So for example, that is something that REIT 1 could pay for. Or it could come from fund balance. I don't know that when we get down to the final decision, have current operations, but it could come from those one-time monies to current operations in 25. For example, we took the interest income from last year, passed that resolution, take the interest income from the internal service funds and also the special revenue funds. Next year, that'll be about $4.5 million. Not a small amount. So if we were to use that $4.5 million for capital instead of operating, it could come from things such as that. That's what we did last year. We used that interest just for capital, not for operating. So, but that's where that could come.
Question on that.
Yes.
So is that an additional revenue source that's on top of the big picture? That'd be special. revenue.
It is.
How does that reflecting on the documents that we've seen?
It is currently in our revenue number for next year.
So that's a
General
portion
fund.
of
In the
your
general
$12
fund.
million
Yeah, right.
balance
upside
to
down.
tally. Yep.
It's just last year we said we would only use it for one-time projects. This year, you don't have to use it for one-time projects. There's nothing restricting you to it, but it is in our total revenue presentation. And it is part of that difference between revenue and expense.
And do we know, does that amount vary wildly per year? or is it pretty stable?
It can vary wildly, primarily based on interest rates. You know, when bonds recently were at a higher level, we were earning a very good interest rate from the skip pool, which is a lot higher than it has been even a few years ago. You know, just think of CD rates from a personal standpoint. CD rates used to be in the 0.1%, and this last year they were over 5% and 6%. I mean, that's a big increase. So the money we earn on the skip pool goes up during those times. Skip pool has an average of about, and I believe that our last average was a little bit short than 2 years, but I know it's around a 2-year average. A little bit longer than the state. So as interest rates go up, they lag behind. But then when interest rates start coming down, which they have now that the Feds have started reducing rates, they're going to still stay high for a period of time because they've been buying instruments that go out longer than the current rates are. So that it will go down eventually if rates do start going back down. But we will have a period of another 12 months or so, I would say, where we'll still have where the skip pool should have a very decent return compared to the.
Okay.
And that's why they do that 2-year ladders, trying to level it out a little bit more. Versus the state, which has to stay to a 90-day maturity, or 30-day maturity with a 90-day investment max.
So we're gonna go through the park stuff next week in the REIT conversations, when Doug's in here. So I think that's recommendation would be to hold that one off until next week's discussion.
And then the last few, the sheriff, you know, we've got the helicopter we purchased, we signed the agreement for earlier this year. We did get $915,000 for the sale of the old helicopter. We have the $500,000 grant. So the other $2 million would need to come out of, I guess, operations from this year or fund balance. When we're talking in 25, it, you know, 24 fund balance. We have the vehicles. There's 2 vehicle lines there. The first one is for the sheriff's vehicles. The second one is for the valley. The valley ones is where the valley is paying for those directly, which is why you see that under special revenue. So whether or not you approve vehicles for the sheriff for the unincorporated area, the valley is buying their own and it comes through the sheriff. So they would be buying at least 24 for the valley. And then you see their other requests that they have much smaller in nature than those other ones, so.
And we do bill the city of Spokane Valley at, like, once we receive the vehicle and put it into service, we do issue an invoice separate from the rest of the LECAP process for those vehicles.
Superior Court had a request in there. It's spread out over 4 years for some courtrooms. And the treasurer's office has a request in there. And is that for the maintenance of teller?
That's, yeah, their teller software related to our ERP project.
Yep. That's new. It's additional.
Enhancements.
It's an enhancement, yes.
That's soft.
Correct.
Yes, that is software.
So they'd started with a limited scope of teller, and through the ERP project, we've kind of
Increased the
expanded
scope of
that
that.
scope to better operate.
Fit within the additional funds of the board. Approved out of ARP for ERP.
The upgrade work to get there is, but the ongoing contract, I don't believe we contemplated in that manner. Especially since the funds ended 26, that
So
give us
those,
too long.
Nothing.
okay, sorry. That's what we have for capital. Again, wasn't looking for decisions today, but just wanted to introduce it. Start thinking about it. We do have some things that are special revenue, so we will put those on there and send an updated version out into your website where you can, your file, excuse me, not website, into your file directory, so you can look at that. You know, for example, IT, where we had money set aside in ERP.
Question. For the sheriff vehicles, did they put that in their budget, like built into their budget proposal?
They originally did, and then we removed it. We removed all capital items from every general fund department.
And put them
And
into
put them in
the
here instead.
So if the commissioners are wanting to have some of these particular capital requests, the department in to give you more information on it, we can get that scheduled, so just let Randy and Tessa know if there's particular ones. We'll have Doug in here, so you'll get a dedicated Doug Parks conversation on next week, but if there's others that you want to have to give some more insights into their requests, let us know.
No,
That's all we had today.
that brings us to miscellaneous. Mr. Fringe?
So on Friday, I was contacted. Representative of the tourism maybe. There is a bill coming before the House and Senate. Jeff go.
You want that?
There's a bill coming before the House and Senate. It's called the Credit Card Competition Act, which basically is something to be promoted by the airlines to cut back on the amount of benefits provided to cardholders for the use of the cards. And this is a bill that airports and tourism industries are opposing because it will have a dramatic impact on programs available for tourists to visit, in our case, the state of Washington. And there's some numbers there about the economic impact that it'll have on the state. And so been requested to present to the board a letter that would go to Senator Murray and Senator Cantwell's office, encouraging them to oppose the Credit Card Competition Act. This is something that both SIA and SeaTac will be opposing, as well as other commercial airports across the country, because it will have a dramatic impact on traveling. So the question is, do we want to, since we own half of the airport, sign on to this letter and get it to Senators Murray and Cantwell? Go to the Senate before it goes to the House and stuff. So we're hoping to kill it in the Senate. So that's the request.
I've never heard of it.
It just came up.
Who are the proponents? What's the,
The proponents
what's
of
their pitch?
the airline industries.
Oh, the airline industry.
The airline industries are the ones that are pushing it because they want to reduce the benefits available through, like Alaska Airlines is, Alaska Airlines is in partnership with B of A to provide the Visa credit card. And she used the credit card, you get discounts for your airline travel. And the airlines want to say, yeah, we don't want to do that much. So they want to cut back on that program. So that's why they are pushing the Credit Card Competition Act. It's an interesting name because they're really eliminating competition and trying to eliminate or reduce the benefits that are available by using credit cards.
This was on the national news last week.
Yep.
Commissioner French,
Yep.
I recall them sharing with the American public this particular act.
Yeah, so it's being pushed by airlines like Delta and Alaska and American and all of the big East. Try and, they want to charge you more for your bags. They want to charge you for the peanuts. And now they don't want to give you credit for using their airplane to begin with. So that's what this is about.
Seems odd too, because as I understand it, the
That's
airlines
how
are
it's
the
like
ones
floating.
working.
They're like getting money from the credit card companies.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
To get people to use that, and there's a kickback to them, I think.
Yeah, I mean, it's a agreement, I believe, between the credit card companies and the airlines, so it'd be surprising if they just renegotiate.
Yeah, but if you get, let's say you get 100 points from Alaska Airlines and it buys you a ticket from here to Vegas. Well, round trip ticket, and the airlines want to make it one way, kind of a deal. They want to reduce the amount of benefits associated with the use of the credit card.
They do that through their agreement with the credit card company.
Because this way, it makes sure that the playing field for all the airlines is the same as they're dealing with the lenders. Whether it's B of A or, any of the other lenders out there.
I just like to take a look at it.
Yeah,
Interesting
kind of what I'd like to do a little bit of research on this, because I'm
finding
thinking
more
there are
things.
layers to this bill,
Oh, yeah.
many layers to this.
There always are.
Yeah.
There always are. This was actually brought to my attention by Tom Kerr last week.
Okay.
So it's kind of the airport asking us to join in the opposition. Okay, I'll take a look.
Any other miscellaneous items?
I have one that, if you remember, gosh, I don't know, a couple months ago, someone came and spoke in the, open forum from the Spokane Human Rights County Task Force. I think they've renamed themselves just Spokane Human Rights. They are a nonprofit, they're not a county entity. And they have made several requests to see if someone from the county would be willing to serve on their board. I think the sheriff's office has a seat. The city police chief has a seat. They have members of different,
I think there's a Martha Lou.
Martha Lou
had been on it.
was, but then I don't think she was able to participate anymore. And so, Amy in my office had said, you know, well, if no one else is interested in serving, I'm really interested in that topic and I'd be willing to serve. I know they're looking for somebody that would be able to report back to the county if there was an issue that came up and wanting to get county support on different, you know, a lot of the work they do is trying to get people to report, you know, discrimination or human right potential violations. And so I know that we're working with the sheriff's office on some different reporting tools with the state AG's office and such. So anyway, I just wanted to float that because I think they've been sending emails requesting the county appoint someone in that seat for about 5 or 6 months. So anyway, Amy in my office just she said, well, I'm willing to volunteer. I can make the meetings. I think they're during the daytime on a Thursday or Friday. So I was just gonna bring that up as unless you had anybody else that thought that they might want to serve or someone in one of our departments that would be a good fit. They keep asking, we just want someone from the county to come be a part of the task force. So.
Are they looking for a county employee or are they looking for somebody from the county? So
No,
it could
well,
be a
we-
volunteer out in the community or
It's
something.
true, but I think they really would like someone who works at the county because they would like the information to come back to if there's an important issue that comes up or they're looking for support or getting the word out or standing up against hate or discrimination. They want county officials to be involved in that and to weigh in, which is why they have the city of Spokane and the sheriff and the police chief and others. I know in the past, Ozzy was really involved with this group and there was several press events where they were standing up against discrimination and hate crimes. So I think they're looking for someone from county staff so that there'd be a stronger line of communication and coordination.
I think it'd be great if we, unless we think of someone that we be a good fit.
But we have,
We don't have a process board members for advising people in our own community. Usually when you have a vacancy on the board, it goes on the board's website and
But
people
this
can
isn't
follow
our
up.
board.
Yeah,
so
I
that's where
understand.
the
So it's a little
struggle
different.
is.
Yeah.
I guess
does
that's where I
Norfolk
was
Loop get on
going is HR, you know, has a newsletter that they send out on a regular basis. What would happen if we just said, hey, anybody interested? And my guess is it's gonna be crickets and then Amy would be.
Okay,
more
well,
than
I
happy
like
to-
the idea of putting it out through
Yeah.
the HR newsletter. And if there's another staff person that works in the courts or somebody that is really passionate and wants to serve, they would have to just arrange for that time off. I think it's like a monthly meeting for a couple hours.
I think that's a good idea.
There's no appointment that the board has. This is just, they're asking for someone who has interest in
I
this.
know, that's
to
why I think it's
participate.
been a little awkward or like we haven't, cause I think Commissioner Cuney originally, when I brought it up to her and forwarded their email to her, she's like, oh, well, we'll just have it be, you know, part of the process that Gina and Shelley do. I'm like, well, no, cause it's not our county board. It's a nonprofit board where they're asking for someone from the county to serve, so.
Is there an application process that they go through, I'm presuming?
Yes. I think it's a pretty basic application. So I like the idea. So,
Share it with our employees.
so maybe I can work with Brenda and Commissioner Cuney's office as well, just to get that information over to HR. And then they could put it out with a link. Give it a time frame, and then if nobody applies, we can appoint somebody else. Okay. It's not
Commissioner,
really
was their intent that the county commissioners would appoint one of our
I don't
employees?
know if
or-
they are not telling us how to do our process. They would just like to have someone. Martha Lou, I think, was on the board for like 6 years or 7 years, but she wasn't able to make the meetings the last couple of years.
You sense that she was representing the county or was she just there on her own? She had interested in it. No, we can, I can tell now.
I don't know if she ever came before the BOCC to say, here's what I'm
I
doing.
think the sheriff was much more active in bringing issues back for, you know, standing up with the public and getting involved. I remember one time when I was on city council years ago, there was like an incident and there was a bunch of us that were organized with the sheriff to speak out. And I think that was organized by the Human Rights Task Force, so, where they were very involved with it. So, okay, I'll get some of those things answered. Look at they can maybe send us their bylaws so we understand what the responsibility is. Okay. Sounds good.
Any other miscellaneous items?
Adam? No? Okay.
All right. Well, then it is 11:36. And that does it for our agenda. We will see everybody back at 9.